Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Episode. Here, I've got a fun episode for you guys this Friday because I have another Konami Viper arcade PCB that is not working. And I will admit that I bought this last year, like 9 months ago, and I knew it was going to be a quick fix. I put it in the closet and I completely forgot I meant to do it. But I had some other people's boards in this week for repair, and I decided since I was having a lot of luck repairing things, I may as well do it for myself. So we're going to revive this Konami Viper board and get it running by the end of the video, and I'm going to teach you how to do it as well. Before we get too far involved though, you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's get into repairing this Viper because I love the Viper hardware and I love all things Konami and 3D. But like most of these boards, they die in one of two ways. One's easy to fix, one is impossible. Either a bad real-time clock chip or heat death of the CPU because it was poorly cooled. The good thing is this one just needs a new real-time clock chip. We can buy those and we can reprogram them with the correct security codes to be able to get this game booting again. And Konami loved using the game's information to write the code to the chip. You'll see here A29UA is the game number, and we can look through different Konami MAME drivers to see those numbers as well if you need to look them up. I will leave you a link below. But we're going to write the real-time clock and VRAM files back to this game. And more often than not, the cards, the CF cards that you get for Viper games will also have the code on them. Basically, Konami created a security key and then went and printed it basically everywhere on the board. You'll see here a code 1 dispatch is 922UAAO2. That's the code, and this silent scope is A13CO2. And unfortunately, Thrill Drive, the sticker's missing. That's going to be a fun one to convert. But I do write the names of the games on the back of the CF to PCMCIA adapters. That way I know what I'm dealing with. And I will say Code 1 Dispatch has an extra layer of security to it that I'll talk about in a future video if I decide to make it. But you'll see this is kind of how it works, and we can create new cards as well. So if you guys want a tutorial on how to modify the Viper to boot different games and how to create games from compact flash cards, leave me a comment down below and I will think about doing that because it's not that hard, but it's probably a topic that there isn't much about on YouTube whatsoever. I kind of love dealing with Konami stuff, so maybe I know how to do it. But you'll see here, this card's 64 megabytes. If you are going to create new cards, I recommend a 64 megabyte card. Anything larger than that, it can sometimes have read errors. You'll see here all of the games are going to support the maximum amount of storage because I've never seen a game go over 48 megabytes, but there might be one. But let's get back to this clock chip. It's an STM48T58Y. If you need to buy another one of these, get it from Mouser or get it from DigiKey. Do not buy it on eBay. These have lithium-ion batteries inside of them, and if you buy old stock chips, the battery might be dead or almost dying when it comes to you. Buy from a reputable source and you will be good. Now, annoyingly, when I bought this board, there was not a photo of this sticker here, and it said it was a GTI Club 2 and it was converted. This is not converted whatsoever. It's a Mocap boxing board, which is not the worst thing in the world to get, but just be aware that sometimes people will falsely list things on eBay even if they don't know that they're falsely listing it. Now to get in, there are an absolute metric crap ton of screws. There are like 17 screws holding this top shield to the Viper down. I'm not going to show you taking all of them off, that would be very boring. So through the magic of editing, we have everything we need right here because we need to get inside of this board to get to that real-time clock chip. So once you finally have all the screws out, just be careful and lift the metal shield up. If it's giving you some issues, it's probably bent. Be careful, don't damage anything, and then you will get into the insides of the Viper. You'll see that PowerPC chip in the middle. There is no fan. If you're going to put this in a cabinet, throw a fan on it. This is one of the reasons why they love to die. The other reason is this damn real-time clock chip. It is a scourge for Konami. It drives me nuts, but we know how to fix it, which is good. And this has been repaired before. How do I know? Because there is a socket on this chip. To get the chip out, just gently wiggle back and forth. I don't like using tools. I feel like they put too much torque on the board itself. But these were not socketed from the factory. The fact that there's a socket on this means it has been repaired at least once, and normally I actually don't like that. I like putting the socket in myself because I hate trying to repair boards that other people have worked on and failed because it means I do not know what they did. But you'll see here there is a notch on the board and there is a notch on that chip. That is the orientation. So when you're doing this, make sure you take good care to get the orientation correct. And when you reinsert the programmed real-time clock chip, don't force it. Make sure your pins are lined up. If it's not going in, that means it isn't correct. Now I use the TL866 Plus Universal Programmer, and this will write all of the Konami real-time clock chips, as well as so many other ROMs that you're going to use in arcade repair, and you'll see that there is a notch on that ZIF or zero insertion force socket, and we just make sure that the pins are lined up correctly, and we have that notch in the same area, and this is how we're going to be able to read and write these chips. And thankfully, they can be programmed more than once, so if you get the wrong file or make a mistake, you just write over it and you're good to go. In XG ECU Pro here, this is the program we're going to be using to write this chip. You can do this for 3DO M2 arcade boards, you can do it for Konami Viper boards, and any other board that uses either the ST or Dallas real-time clock chip. Konami like to go back and forth. I already have this selected because I've done it before, but pull it up through the menu and hit read. There's just random junk on this chip. I have no idea what I did with it last time, but there's definitely not a security code for the Konami Viper or Mocap boxing. But luckily via MAME dumps we have access to those files, so it's perfectly fine and we're able to repair our own boards because we own them and it's totally cool to do. We're going to load a file up in binary default, don't change any settings, and from the ROM zip we're going to write NVRAM A29AAA underscore NVRAM. We're going to select that file and we're going to hit OK. Once you hit OK, you're going to see everything populated into that screen right there with the security code, and we're just going to come up and hit program, and then we're going to program the chip. It knows where all the pins are, it does pin selection. It will say it failed. That is because there's flipped bits from the real-time clock. This is fine. If you see it failed, it is no big deal whatsoever. And now we'll see that we have the proper security codes on this chip that should allow us to boot. And then we've got a bunch of stuff like high score tables. The checksum is only for the first two lines, everything else doesn't matter. But if we read that chip back and scroll to the top, you're going to see we have a perfectly written chip. So like I showed you just before, we're going to pop that good real-time clock chip back into the board, and we're going to go over and try to test boot it to see if we got it done. I do recommend just putting the shield on loosely. Don't screw it back on until you know it's fixed, because here's the thing. It's bad luck to put it back together until you know it's repaired. If you put it back together, you probably didn't fix it. But now we're ready to test the game, and on boot it will check the memory card first to make sure it works. I recommend leaving that on, doesn't take long at all. And then we're going to get a real-time clock OK green icon. I had a red real-time clock bad before, so now we are in the game. You'll see here that I have position sensor bad, and I can just use the test switch to bypass this, because this game does use motion control, so of course it's not finding those motion sensors. I do not own them, but luckily it does allow for controls to go through the test menu, and we can do stuff like get into CG check and make sure the game is working and the graphics GPU is fine. And don't worry, you're going to get some gameplay, because I found out something very interesting about Mocap boxing, that it actually does work in some ways without those motion sensors. But if we go into game mode, we're basically playing Mocap boxing. Now this wasn't my intent. I thought I was getting a GTI Club 2 board, but because that real-time clock chip is now socketed, I can flash a GTI Club 2 card to a CF card, and I can play this game on the Viper. So I'm probably going to make this into a multi, but just seeing Mocap boxing running is a ton of fun, because I've never seen a cabinet in real life. But interestingly, I did find out some weird things about this game. Now it uses two boxing gloves you hold in your hands that have X, Y, and Z sensors on them, as well as accelerometers, and there's a ring around the cabinet that tracks where those gloves are in real time. You punch by pushing forward towards your opponent. But apparently there is code in the game that allows you to use an arcade stick, because I'm hitting my opponent right now and I do not have any motion sensor gloves in my hands. So that makes me wonder what other signals might still be active to control this character. Because maybe it didn't start out life as a motion sensor game, maybe it had two different style cabinets and they took that out. But you will see here, I am able to punch, and if I get my timings just right, I'm going to be able to knock my opponent down. I mean, he stuck his chin out, he was asking for it, and we're 100% going to give it to him, because that is just how it works. But apparently you can play Mocap boxing with a controller, you just can't play much of it. But leave me a comment down below. Should I get sensors for this game? Should I try to find them so I can get an original capture? Or should I basically just treat this as a curiosity and move on? Because even I can't decide. I never had any plans to keep it as a Mocap boxing. system, but now that I can play it a little bit, I'm kind of a little bit hooked, because you'll see here in the how to play, it shows all of that motion sensing, but it makes me wonder if there is some code left for using an arcade button to punch. I wonder if there are some inputs on one of the JAMA edges, because it has two, where you could actually move around and control your character via an arcade stick. Because like I said, I can hit the player, and that shouldn't be possible with a button. You should have to push that motion controller in your hand forward. And honestly, that's something I didn't expect to find. But this is how you get it done. We have another working Konami Viper, and I do hope this helps other people out in the future. But if we go back into the test menu here, you can see the I/O check. The glove check is just for sensors and absolutely nothing reads. But on the I/O check screen, you're going to have inputs for left, right, start, things such as that in CoinMex. But there is no input registering for buttons, yet if I push a button, I throw a punch, and that is quite interesting, and I'm thinking maybe there's probably more controls in this game that I just don't have the right wiring for at this point in time. But it is so fun to fix another board and to teach you guys how to do it, because Konami Viper games are a ton of fun. Now just remember that a lot of games have unique control systems like Mocap Boxing. It has motion controls. Something like Silent Scope is going to need the gun with the screen in it and a medium resolution monitor. I have a Warzade in the closet light gun game that also uses medium resolution, so make sure you know what you need for a Viper before you purchase one, because it's quite possible you end up with a working board but you're missing some sort of hardware to play it, like in my instance, Mocap Boxing. So I'm probably going to do a conversion to GTI Club and Thrill Drive, and if you want to see that video, leave me a comment down below. Short of that, this is how you repair a Viper. Hope it helps you guys in the future, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.